Hi everyone, it's Nimi, a personal trainer for campus recreation. Today I'm going to go over the 3 principles of progression that will help you increase the intensity of almost any exercise that you're performing on the TRX. The 3 principles we're going to learn about today are called the vector resistance principle, the stability principle, and the pendulum principle. Now, these might sound a little complicated, but in reality, they're pretty simple to start incorporating into any exercise you're performing on the TRX. So the first principle is the vector resistance principle. Basically, this just means that we are going to change our body angle to change the resistance coming from the TRX. When we're standing up and down, most of our body weight is carried through our legs. When we step back into more of an incline, we'll notice that our body weight does less of the work and more of the resistance is coming from the TRX. Let me show you. So in this row position right here, I'm nearly standing upright at my shallowest angle. There's less resistance coming from the TRX as most of my weight is being supported by my legs. However, if I walk my feet closer to the anchor point, I'll notice that this exercise becomes a little harder as I'm pulling more weight from my upper body. The transfer of weight from that vertical position to that inclined position forms the basis of this principle. Essentially, the closer you walk your feet towards the anchor point, the harder an exercise is going to be, and conversely, the further away you walk your feet from the anchor point, or the more vertical you are, the easier the exercise is going to be. This is super easy to make adjustments whether you're facing the anchor point or facing away from the anchor point. Just remember, in either direction, your feet change the angle of the exercise, in turn changing the resistance. The second principle is the stability principle. So this principle just covers changing your base of support to make an exercise more or less challenging for stability. So your base of support is the area created between your 2 feet. So a wide base of support has our feet spread out nice and wide, more than hips width apart, giving us a wide base to balance on and keep us stable. This position is going to be more stable than a position in which our feet are zipped up close together. This is a smaller base of support and thus a little more challenging for your core and for the rest of your body to stabilize those little movements. Essentially, making an exercise on a TRX easier or harder depends on the base of support you have at your feet. For example, taking the same exercise in our TRX row, you'll notice when my feet are zipped up together, this is going to be a little more challenging than if I took a nice wide step. This distributes the weight between both of my feet and a bigger base of support, thus making the exercise a little less challenging. The different bases you can have with your feet include the wide position as shown, the offset position with one leg in front and the other leg behind. This will also increase the base of support, but instead of increasing the base in a horizontal direction, you're increasing it in a vertical direction. So feeling free to bend that back leg as needed to come all the way down into your row and squeezing up. Again, this offset position along with your wide base of support are both going to be easier versions of any exercise in standing. To make it more challenging or to progress the exercise, again, you're going to bring those feet closer together to a neutral foot position where my feet are right under my hip points, or even zipped up together where my feet are touching. To progress it even further from here, you have that single leg stance, which is the smallest base of support as your body is being positioned over 1 foot point. This principle also applies when you're in the plank position on the floor. In a plank position, when you're on your hands, it's going to be a little harder than if you're on your elbows. This is because your center of gravity, which is where all the forces act on you in that one place, is going to be further away from the ground when you're on your hands, as you're more vertical, versus when you're on your elbows, that center of gravity is going to be closer to your base of support, which is on the ground. So keeping that in mind, whether you're in standing, changing your feet position depending on the level of exercise you want to be at, or when you're in a plank position, starting on your elbows and maybe trying to progress up to your hands. Our last principle is the pendulum principle, which is just changing your starting position to adjust the resistance of the exercise. This can only be done most effectively if your TRX is hanging from the ceiling, in which it has room to move equally in both directions. For any situation in which your TRX is up against a door or another wall, you won't have the ability to move behind the anchor point. However, you can still work to make a progression using the pendulum principle. For the pendulum principle, moving your TRX away from the neutral line towards you will make the exercise a little harder. Conversely, moving the TRX to neutral or behind neutral, which would be behind the door, would make the exercise a little easier. In that instance, when the TRX is at neutral or behind the door, you have the help of gravity wanting to swing that TRX back towards that neutral point, in which case, again, the exercise will be a little easier to perform. Conversely, when the straps are out in front of that neutral line, you don't have quite the same assistance, rather you have a little more of a challenge. So, for example, a TRX glute bridge will be a little harder when performed with your feet away from that neutral line, as opposed to if you were performing that TRX glute bridge with your feet right under the anchor point. And there we have it, our 3 principles of progression: our vector resistance principle, our stability principle, and our pendulum principle. In reality, all these changes are mainly occurring either at your feet, or with the change of your body angle, or with the change of your starting position. Keep in mind that even the smallest adjustments, whether that's in your base of support or in your angle, can make a difference. So start small with your progressions. Take a second to figure out if that's what suits you before making another change. Thank you guys for tuning into this video. Be sure to check out our other offerings on our YouTube channel and on our Instagram page. Bye everyone!